Chapter 7, Manufacturing Accounts. Please make sure that you've worked through 7.1 Baseline Assessment before continuing with this lesson. Manufacturing Activities. Up until now, you've only recorded transactions for businesses offering a simple service or buying and selling products, like wholesalers and retailers. Stock kept by these businesses is valued at a total price paid for the product to get it to the business. In other words, delivery costs to the business are included. Where the businesses simply buy and sell the products and you are just working out the cost to get the product to the business, it is quite simple. All you need to do is consider the fact that the price you paid for the goods becomes your cost of sales when you sell it. However, manufacturers make what they sell, and there are a number of costs that are incurred in the manufacture of their product. As such, you will need to carefully track all the costs that are incurred in making the product in order to be able to calculate your cost of sales. You will need to consider things like the raw materials. In other words, the ingredients or the parts that will be used to make the product. Labor needs to be factored in, both the labor of the people who are actually directly making the product, as well as the indirect labor of other people that need to be involved in the factory, even if they don't actually touch the product. You will also need to consider overheads, such as factory rental, depreciation, water and electricity, etc. As you can see, there are many more costs that need to be considered for a manufacturer than for a simple trader. Consider this cartoon. The problem that is clearly indicated here is that they are not being able to keep track of their costs, and as such, their costs are not staying under control. Of course, if the sales were also more than a zillion, it wouldn't be as much of a problem, but this is unlikely in this case. It is vitally important that the production department manages its costs very carefully, and this is where the role of the managerial accountant comes into play, specifically with cost accounting for a manufacturer. Let's have a look at the actual expenses that a manufacturer will incur. As mentioned previously, we will need to consider raw materials, or the ingredients or parts that are used to make a product. These are considered direct material costs. To this, you would need to add all your direct labor costs, in other words, your wages, salaries, and possibly also your UIF contributions, etc. Direct material costs, together with direct labor, are known as primary costs or direct costs. These are all the costs that can be directly attributed to the particular product or each unit. Direct labor and overheads together are called conversion costs. In other words, they are the cost of taking the raw materials and converting them into a product that you can sell. Overheads are those items that cannot be directly allocated to a particular unit. They may be both variable and fixed. Remember, variable costs are those costs that will change or increase the more you make. Fixed costs, however, stay the same no matter how many of a product are made. Overheads could include your indirect raw materials, otherwise known as consumable stores, your indirect labor, such as the wages or salary of supervisors, etc., who are managing the factory, as well as cleaners who are simply tidying up instead of making a particular product. Other costs, such as factory rental, depreciation of machinery, water and electricity, etc., are also all overheads. All of these production costs together will contribute to your cost of sales or cost of manufactured goods. When you prepare an income statement for a manufacturer, it will actually look exactly the same as that of a trader. The only thing is that you've got to keep in mind that your cost of sales, shown here as cost of manufactured goods, needs to be calculated, as shown in the grey block. You will show your sales, you will subtract your cost of sales in order to earn your gross profit. Once you've done that, the rest of the income statement is prepared in exactly the same way as for a trading business. Here you can see examples of non-manufacturing costs. You will have your marketing costs, such as advertising, selling expenses, etc., as well as your administrative costs, such as stationery, salaries and wages, telephone, and so on. Note here that the salaries and wages referred to are those salaries and wages of non-factory employees. In other words, the salespeople in the shop, the secretary or the bookkeeper who are working in the office. They are not part of the factory costs. These will all be shown as part of operating expenses, which are subtracted from gross profit in order to calculate the net profit. Hopefully now you can clearly see the importance of tracking and calculating all your manufacturing costs, as well as how this fits into your income statement as you learned it before. You can now try and do 7.2 group activity. Spend a lesson tracking the costs of any business that you decide to do. Imagine that you are a manufacturing business. Remember to allocate different roles to each group member. In other words, division of labor will help you to produce your item faster. You need to track your costs. You should be provided with a kit, be it a building kit of Lego, maybe it's a beading exercise, maybe you're going to sew something. Whatever it is, you need to allocate some cost to the kit that you are starting with. In other words, what you would have had to pay for those raw materials. You then need to calculate 10 Rand per item as wages. So as you finish producing a product, 10 Rand wages would need to be paid. You also need to imagine that the equipment you are using, maybe it's scissors, pins, needles, glue, spanners, whatever it might be that you need to borrow, you are going to pay rent at 10 Rand per hour. You also need to consider factory rental of 10 Rand per hour for your desk that you are using.